US reads the right act to China on COVID-19.
We're not happy about China, I will tell you that. The ink wasn't dry on a great trade deal, and all of a sudden, the plague comes in from China. We're not happy about it.
Anger against China rises in the United States.
But China wasn't honest, nor was it responsible. So now we must hold the Chinese government accountable for causing the spread of COVID-19 by lying to the world about it.
US Senator seeks sanction against China and better ties with India. United States also raises the Tibet card as global anger against China peaks. Is it advantage India? Top focus on India first.
After more than 85,000 American lives were lost due to Wuhan coronavirus, the US wants China to be held accountable for what the United States says is lies, deception and cover-up by China on the Wuhan coronavirus. The US has also stepped on the dragon's tail, picking up on China's Achilles heel, Tibet. I'll tell you much more about that story, and with that big question, with world pressure mounting on China, will supply chains actually shift out of there? Will it be advantage India? Lots of stuff happening across the world on China being held accountable. I'm Gaurav Sawant. Let's get started with the headlines. The world is blaming China for the Wuhan coronavirus. Before I talk about the bigger picture globally, let's take a look at the latest in India. So as on date, there are about 81,000 confirmed coronavirus cases in our country. Let's get to the exact numbers. 81,970 to be precise. So far, 2,649 lives have been lost. 27,920 people have recovered, and this is the latest information that's coming from the Ministry of Health. But there are some states where there is still clear and present danger of the spread of coronavirus, and especially in certain clusters. Let's focus on Maharashtra, where the situation remains rather grim in select pockets, not just in Mumbai. A huge spike in coronavirus cases in Maharashtra, 1,576 new cases in the past 24 hours. 49 people have succumbed to the coronavirus in the past 24 hours in Maharashtra, taking the total death toll due to coronavirus to 1,068. This is extremely important for you with the possibility of resumption of domestic flights soon. Airport Authority of India has asked travellers to download the Arogya Setu app. It would be mandatory for you to have the Arogya Setu app if you want to fly. Flyers have been directed to do a web check-in and carry out a printout of their boarding pass before heading to airport to fly. The Badrinath temple reopened this morning. 28 people, including the chief priest, were present at the reopening of the temple doors. Prime Minister Narendra Modi sent his prayer request to the priest of the Badrinath temple. Chief of the Army Staff General M.M. Naravane has hinted at a foreign hand in Nepal's protest on the Lipulekh road. This is the road to Kailash and Mansarovar. This is the road that's built in Indian territory, but Nepal is protesting, and the Chief of the Army Staff says this is a result of outside interference. And is this outside interference the dragon in the room? That's right. There's a hint that China is meddling in Nepal's internal affairs, and there are many indicators to China's direct meddling in politics in Nepal. But the army chief has indicated that Nepal's protest is at the behest of outside powers. Nepal's protest against the road on the Kailash Mansarovar route, which incidentally the road has been built in Indian territory, is an indicator of this outside interference. And I quickly want to cut across to India Today's defense editor Abhishek Bhalla, who joins us for more on this big story. there is evidence, Abhishek, that China is interfering in internal politics within Nepal, whether it's the fight in the Communist Party between the Prime Minister and the head of the party, between Prachand and KP Sharma Oli. There is indication that the Chinese ambassador is interfering there. Is that what the chief is indicating?
Well, Gaurav, this is a big statement coming from the Indian Army Chief, General Naravne. You know, without naming China, he did say that, Nepal's protest is at the behest of another party, another country. So that's extremely important, and it's very, very significant, amid the current scenario where there have been ceasefire violations at the line of actual control. There have been clashes between Indian and Chinese troops in eastern Ladakh as well as in North Sikkim. And even though the chief reiterated that, whatever has happened at the LAC has no bearing to the domestic or international developments taking place. But the fact that the Indian Army chief went on and said that this is happening at the behest of another country is a clear indicator that China is egging on Nepal as far as this protest is concerned.
There are many countries, Abhishek, for the moment, many thanks for joining me. There are many countries who are now saying that supply chains need to shift out of China. Dependence on China needs to reduce, and it needs to be will it be advantage India is the question that we'll come to. But let's talk about US President Donald Trump first. He is extremely miffed with Chinese President Xi Jinping and what many in America describe as China's lies, deception and cover-up on the Wuhan coronavirus. Remember, more than 85,000 Americans have lost their lives so far. Death toll continues to creep up in the United States of America. More than 3 lakh people have been killed worldwide in the Wuhan coronavirus, and China continues, according to several world powers, with its lies and deception. Now Donald Trump says they're even looking at cutting off ties with China.
With every passing day, the coronavirus toll is rising in the US. Already over 85,000 are dead, and President Donald Trump is livid. In a blistering attack on China, Trump has said he doesn't want to talk to Chinese President Xi Jinping anymore. That is not all. He even threatened to snap trade ties with China.
We got a lot of things going with China. We're not happy about China, I will tell you that. The ink wasn't dry on a great trade deal, and all of a sudden, the plague comes in from China. We're not happy about it.
Trump is adding more bite to his bark. He has asked American pension funds to pull out billions of dollars from the Chinese markets. Trump and some of his allies have also held talks on how to punish Beijing for the outbreak. Beijing, which is under intense global glare, has called upon Washington to show restraint.
Maintaining the stable developments of Sino-US relations conforms to the fundamental interest of the two peoples and is also conducive to world peace and stability.
As the world turns up the heat on China, the big question for India is, can it benefit from a global effort to become less dependent on supply chains rooted in China?
President Trump has already announced that he's going to break all relationship with China. Japan wants to ship all its manufacturing facilities from China. Europe is also thinking on those lines. Australia is thinking on those lines. So this is providing great opportunity to India. That some of the manufacturing can be shifted in India, and India is going to be benefited.
The global economy is reeling from the coronavirus pandemic. With the US presidential election scheduled later this year, the trade war between Washington and Beijing is set to escalate.
The US has called India its pivot to Asia even in the past. But after 80,000 lives were lost in the United States of America, post the Wuhan COVID virus, the US is holding China accountable and wants India to play a much bigger role in the region, not just strategically, but also economically. The US is talking about shifting supply chains from China to India and reducing its dependence on the dragon. What will this entail in the times to come remains the big question. With cameraman Kripal Singh in Delhi, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. So it's not just US President Donald Trump. A US senator has actually come up with an 18-point agenda to hold China accountable. This incidentally includes enhancing military ties and economic ties with India, better ties with Taiwan, empowering Japan, building Japan's military might, having better ties with Vietnam, shifting supply chains out of China. But are these just words, or does the United States actually intend to act on it?
As humanity battles the pandemic, the world is pointing fingers at China and demanding payback. China-US ties have nosedived. First, Trump accused China of a cover-up leading to the spread of the pandemic, then saying the virus came from a lab in Wuhan. And now, a top US senator, Tom Tillis, has unveiled an 18-point plan to hold China accountable. Interestingly, the senator's proposals include enhancing military ties with India. He's also called for moving the manufacturing chain out of China.
One study found that if China told the truth and acted only 3 weeks earlier, the number of cases of the virus could have been cut by 95%, and we could have avoided this pandemic. But China wasn't honest, nor was it responsible. So now we must hold the Chinese government accountable for causing the spread of COVID-19 by lying to the world about it. That's why I'm introducing a plan that will hold China accountable.
Trump has been advocating for long what Senator Tillis is suggesting.
Look, there's nothing good about what happened with the plague, okay, especially the death. But the one thing is, it said Trump was right. Because I was getting a lot of fight back, even from people that I like a lot in Congress, etc. And now they're not fighting. These stupid supply chains that are all over the world, where you have a supply chain where they're made in all different parts of the world, and one little piece of the world goes bad and the whole thing is messed up. I said, we shouldn't have supply chains. We should have them all in the United States.
The US is not the only nation targeting China. Australia is pushing for an inquiry into the origins of the novel coronavirus.
When it comes to our relationship with China, it is built on mutual benefit. And we have a comprehensive strategic partnership which we've formed. And within that partnership, there are issues that need to be addressed from time to time, and the issues around beef and barley are those matters, and they've been, particularly on the barley issue, been running for some time. And we always welcome the involvement of all those who are directly involved in these sectors.
France too has opened a front against China by ignoring Beijing's warning to sell arms to Taiwan. Bureau Report, India Today.
India Today's Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan now joins me for more on this big story. Geeta, the 18-point plan to hold China accountable, is this posturing, or does the United States actually intend to move supply chains out of China and perhaps to India?
Well, quite a few senators in America are seeking action against China. Tom Tillis is one of them, but he's come out with an elaborate plan. The 18-point agenda has been divided into 5 groups. The main points and main agenda items are to promote and protect America's economy, to sanction China, to investigate China, to look at international accountability with regards to China, and finally expansion of military presence in these parts of the world where China's military aggression and posturing is quite visible and evident. So a huge elaborate plan by Senator Tillis to ensure that China is not only taken into account, but proactive action is taken against China to contain not just the spread of coronavirus, but also the aggressive posturing by China.
Geeta Mohan, stay with me for a moment, because now the US is actually twisting the dragon's tail. The United States is talking about Tibet and the missing Panchen Lama for the past 25 years and counting, and this clearly will not be music to China's ears. Tibet is China's Achilles heel, and take a look at what the United States is saying. The United States has renewed its call for the release of Gurun Nima, who was recognized by Tibet by His Holiness the Dalai Lama as the 11th Panchen Lama at the age of 6 in 1995. Now, that young lad, then 6 years old, was taken into custody 3 days later, apparently, and he's still not been seen after more than 2 decades. China, of course, appointed its own Panchen Lama. Who's made a number of very tightly scripted public appearances, even though Tibetans do not recognize him or acknowledge him. American lawmakers are demanding that China must immediately release Panchen Lama.
The Panchen Lama is one of the highest positions in Tibetan Buddhism and, according to tradition, plays a role in the recognition of the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. Just 3 days after he was selected as the 11th Panchen Lama, Chinese government authorities kidnapped him and his family. They have not been seen or heard from by anyone outside of China since then. He should be freed because he has the right under international law to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, including the right to practice his religion as he chooses.
For 25 years, we don't know where Panchen Lama is, what is he doing, whether his parents, even siblings, have access to him, can meet him or not. So it's very tragic and sad. But we will not forget Kunsi Panchen Rinpoche, and we will remember him till he's released and till he can be with the Tibetans. We urge Tibetans all over the world and friends all over the world to light a candle to remember Kunsi Panchen Rinpoche and not to forget him, and most importantly, to demand his immediate release by the government of China.
Tibet is China's Achilles heel, and the United States of America has now started twisting the dragon's tail on Tibet. The United States wants China to come clean on the Panchen Lama missing for the past 25 years, and the US has made it very clear this cannot be the template for China to deal with His Holiness the Dalai Lama's succession. With cameraman Kripal Singh in Delhi, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. I once again want to quickly bring in India Today's Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan for more on this. So Geeta, it's not just the United States of America. Now there's global pressure mounting on China, whether it's Australia or France. Everyone wants China to be held accountable and to come clean on the global spread of coronavirus.
That's right. America is not the only country. We've seen senators, we've seen different political parties or political leaders from America who voiced their concerns against China, but that's not it. We've seen a lot of other countries, and particularly governments, not just political parties or politicians, who've come out and sought a response with regards to the opaqueness with which China has handled the entire pandemic. New Zealand, Australia, a lot of European countries, all of them have come out not just questioning China but also questioning the WHO and its inaction in coming out with strong responses when it comes to China. There are legislations, there are countries that have sued. The United Kingdom also might not have sued the government of China but particular companies. So action is being taken at various levels, government to government, where governments are questioning the Chinese administration, as also governments suing and questioning Chinese companies. At various levels, we are seeing how China has been handled the entire pandemic with such opaqueness that it requires investigation. But also the companies that are working out of China are also being questioned by various governments. So again, we'll have to wait and see how the World Health Organization, how a strengthened WHO may be on the other side of the lockdown and the coronavirus pandemic really take action or hold China or those countries that have not handled the pandemic well to account, but particularly in this case, China.
Geeta, for the moment, many thanks for joining me. The question remains, was China's role above board? China has learned to have stopped flights from Wuhan to Shanghai and Beijing, did not let people travel within China, but the same people from Wuhan were permitted to fly to Italy, to other parts of Europe, even to the United States of America. Why was this? There are acts of omission and commission for which China needs to come clean. And look at what's happening in China even as we speak. Once again, schools have reopened, offices have reopened, life, economy is coming back on track in China. There are several, of course, measures that China has also taken internally. But question remains, was China opaque and was China's conduct above board?
In the first quarter of 2020, China's economy contracted for the first time since 1992 as the coronavirus pandemic battered consumer spending. According to the country's National Bureau of Statistics, its GDP fell by 6.8% during the first quarter. However, early data from the second quarter shows that while China's economy has not fully recovered from the fall seen in Q1, it is on its way back.
I think that China will gradually begin to ease the lockdowns. I'm pretty confident that the second quarter GDP figures will be better than the first quarter GDP figures.
China's foreign exchange reserves expanded to $3.0915 trillion at the end of April, from $3.0606 trillion at the end of March. The amount exceeded market expectations of $3.056 trillion and ended a falling streak since January. As China eased its lockdown measures and gradually reopened its economic activities, major projects resumed in North China's Hubei province and Central China's Henan province. In South China's Henan province, over 11,700 graduating students from 13 colleges returned to campus over the weekend. And Shanghai's Disneyland too reopened its doors to the public. The park, which has been closed since January 25th, is the first out of all of its 6 major theme parks around the world to reopen since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Over the May Day holidays, overall sales recovered to almost 75% of its normal trend, and China earned around $6 billion from domestic tourists. Even IT giant Apple reported sales from China have picked up and were headed in the right direction. China, where the virus was first detected, is a major market for Apple, responsible for about 1/6 of its overall sales, and is also home to most of Apple's contract factories. China was the first to suffer, and its businesses recovering gives hopes to tottering economies around the world where the virus continues to ravage.
And the other big story domestically, well, the government is now enforcing an app-based testing for COVID-19, and this enables fast collection and collation of data. But the issue remains, will this app then be linked to the Arogya Setu app? Remember, Arogya Setu app is now being made mandatory if you want to fly the moment flights resume in our country. And there are many who are raising the privacy issue once again.
Doctors and data entry operators at a prestigious Delhi hospital quickly type in details of a suspected COVID patient onto a special Ministry of Health app before testing. The first mandatory requirement is a mobile phone. As soon as the patient's mobile number is filled into the app, an OTP number is generated. Once that is filled in the app, the patient's details are all on a central server.
App does not allow us to go ahead without the availability of a mobile phone. The mobile phone does not necessarily need to be that of the person himself. Anybody from his family also can give his mobile number. The idea is traceability, and that helps us to ensure that this can be done. As far as this app usage is concerned, it has become mandatory, and it is mandatory across the country.
The app was introduced in the last week of April and is now mandatory for every RT-PCR test. All information about the patient is on a Ministry of Health server. It helps to remove duplication of effort with first filing of a 5-page form and then storing that information online. It's also easier to track the movement of the patient through that mobile phone. The ICMR has also circulated a manual for the use of the app, which says the phone's location services must always be on to enable the functioning of the app.
This app would be very useful to get the patient information, and it would also reduce the use of hard copies, which could be a carrier of infection. And at the same time, it would also help to put the data on the ICMR portal on a real-time basis.
It's also mandatory for a doctor's prescription for the RT-PCR test, and also for Indian citizens to fill their Aadhaar number for the test to be conducted. Government sources are tight-lipped on whether the information on the central server and the app will automatically be linked to the government's Brahmastra in the war on coronavirus, the Arogya Setu app. However, there are privacy concerns also being raised by activists.
The strict enforcement of app-based RT-PCR testing not only helps the government to real-time collect and collate data on COVID-19 cases, it also helps track those with coronavirus. Not only that, when linked to the Arogya Setu app, it will help ensure that only if you are safe can you travel on public transport, fly, be in metros, or go to malls and marketplaces. With cameraman Kripal Singh in Delhi, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. So privacy concerns notwithstanding, the government has said now if you want to fly the moment flights resume, your Arogya Setu app needs to say you are safe. We will continue to track developments on the story very closely, but that is all I have for you on this special broadcast. Many thanks for watching.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.